Professor, I mean, Dan.
Yeah, I don't know what the rule is in terms of whether I'm really a professor. I do teach at a law school.
My mother beat it, and I mean, I know you're a lawyer, so please don't tell any cops, but my mom beat it into me and my brother to respect education from an early age. I mean, she was like, you guys are gonna, because it was on the Latino side, and there's a lot of lack of education. A lot of my family didn't have education. So my mom and my aunts came to California from Texas. And they were all like, you know, this is what we do. We are going to be you get degrees and do smart stuff behind a desk working Latinos. And that's why, like, my brother's the top salesperson for photocopiers in the West Coast. And my cousin worked in an IT thing. But those are the family in California. The family in Texas they all work at a gas plant.
What do you do when you're not running or vice president?
I will tell you, but it has nothing to do with this. I work for the freeway department, but they have nothing to do with this, so I don't ever bring them up because it's like, and I'm low on the totem pole. I'm a bureaucrat. But that's also what got me into this was you have to do a lot of figures and data. And if you work in government, you have to know what like the rules are and the regulations are and a little bit of policy. So I was like forced into this world. I think it was in Sacramento, and I first started learning about federal income taxes. And that California pays a bunch in, and how much we get in federal assistance for roads and stuff like that. And it was some big joke in Sacramento that we paid more into the system than we got, and we were never going to get the amount of money that we needed to actually fix our roads. So that was just some like, they'd laugh about it, and I'd go, "What's so funny?" And they go, "Ah, ha, ha, ha. You know, our budget's $300 billion that we need, and we're going to get 100." And but we spent actually 300 and went to these other states, and isn't that funny? And I'm this naive young person going, why is that funny? Well, nobody had asked that question or was silly enough to ask that question. And I'm like, well, let me explain it to you how things work and have for 30 years. I'm like, this all just works this way. Everybody's just used to this, and go, yeah. We've been a donor state since the 70s, whatever. And then I'm reading these reports, and they're like, because the federal government ranks all infrastructure across all 50 states. Every year they usually do like you name it, schools, dams, floodplains. Someone does some sort of report going, the state of floodplains across 50 states, or there's some federal department doing that. So they kept doing these reports, and it listed like California as having the worst of everything. Like bridges, roads. Not that all of our stuff was bad, but that we had so much that we hadn't gotten to maintain that we started to have some of the worst examples. So we had like some of the worst levees most likely to break simply because we had so many levees, and some of them hadn't gotten to. And like the levee over Sacramento was rated by Department of Homeland Security to be as insecure as the one over New Orleans that caused Katrina. I remember Schwarzenegger brought that up. And then what was it? There was the bridge going into the LA Long Beach Ports Complex over the 710 freeway was the most likely to collapse bridge in all of America.
Oh, wow.
And it wasn't that all of our bridges were likely to collapse. It's just that we had so much, we had so many roads and so many people and so many bridges that we couldn't get to all of them. And then there's these little pieces, and you're like, oh, well, that's interesting. And then you hear about, like, well, Florida got all the money they needed for their entire transportation budget. They have new roads. You guys in California are horrible. You don't have new roads. It's because you don't manage things right. And we're like, well, it's actually because you get $2 back in federal tax receipts and for every dollar you spend.
Why'd Florida get so much?
I don't really know. Basically, it's worked out since the late 80s. So, you send all the money in, and then it gets doled out to the states. And then the next year, somebody goes back and does an audit going, well, who got what? And is that fair? And Florida is one of those states that gets, like, for every dollar they send, they get 3. And it just kills me because as a Californian, and I'm going to act like I don't know all of this in a few minutes here, but the governor of Florida will go on and go, those crazy, unbusiness-friendly Californians with their high taxes, and they don't know business, and come to Florida. We have low taxes because we love business. You have low taxes because your government's subsidized.
They don't have income tax, right? Or
yeah, or some, yeah, and they don't have to because
they have a lot of toll roads. That could be why their roads are better. They have so many tolls there.
They do have a lot of tolls, and they do repair their roads. A lot of America fixes their roads every year. Like in California, because of our mild climate, we can, like, wait. I had family live in Colorado. They're fixing everything every spring.
That's right.
Winter, it destroys all the roads, right? So if you go to Colorado, everything's beautiful and pristine and because they fix it every year. It's like built fresh. And I'm like, we don't, because they have to, right? Like their roads will fall apart because of the snow apparently, and then they put salt on the roads.
Right.
And then that's bad. That's like, and we don't have to do that in California, except in the far north.
So
thank you.
Oh yeah, no problem. So there's a big debate after this with a bunch of people?
There's going to be one at 1:00. You are invited to that. Everybody's invited to that. That is a general, plain old recall debate.
Who's in that one?
Well, Matt Mickelson, who is part of the actual recall effort, although we are not doing it in line with them. He's individually chose to participate in this. Wayne Frazier is a accountant lawyer who also ran. And then I invited everybody else. And I think we're probably going to get 5 or 6 people. And I have to say, I love this for this reason. We finally got these debates on Wikipedia.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. I didn't even do it. Someone else saw them and then goes, this is good. You guys are the only ones doing it, like you guys have said and posted it up for us.
You're on the Wikipedia for the recall page?
Yeah, the 2021 governor recall page. I didn't post it. Someone else saw it and goes, well, there's no one else doing debates, so I'll post it. And then they tried to take it down, but they got to keep it up. If you go there, there's more liberal candidates in these debates than conservatives, at least when you're looking at the color bars on the wiki page. Just saying, because like each debate automatically takes the person's name and it geocodes who they are based upon its history. And so it was like green, Dem, Republican.
Oh,
Dem, green, Republican. Dem, green, conservative. And I'm like, I didn't get it, but if you look at the color bar, it's like there's a lot of Californians from many different perspectives who are participating. It's just beautiful.
Oh yeah, there are a lot of Democrats and liberals and green in this recall.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to bring this up during the actual debate, but technically they polled, and a majority of Californians, and I'm not giving any opinion on this at all. You can say it's a dumb idea or whatever. I'm just reporting. But they did poll, and it was like a majority of registered voters, which are majority Democrats, said they wanted someone other than Newsom to run, not because they didn't like Newsom, but just in case.
Oh, in the recall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yet the Democratic Party of California has technically officially said the opposite. Nobody but Newsom should run. And yet we have polling showing a majority of voters said, well, look, I don't like the recall effort either. I like you, Newsom. I think you're a good guy, but just in case.
Well, I think Gray Davis is really mad that Bustamante ran against, in the recall. He wanted people to vote no on the recall, so he thought that legitimized it. But
that's exactly what they're thinking. And
I don't like how they're trying to push forward the recall, because it sounds like now they think Newsom's real popular, so now they're trying to push it forward or something. I'd like to have more time.
He's very popular. He's still majority popularity. His popularity is rising. And, there's a big gamble going how much of this was about people were upset with his policies, which is, I feel, everybody in democracy is free to ask that, versus how much of this is people just mad that we had to go through a pandemic. And I think that's a legitimate question. Like, are you just frustrated that we had to go through this? Because I was, it wasn't fun.
Right. Not really his fault.
Exactly. So, if you want to go, oh, well, I don't like how he managed the pandemic. Okay. But is that really the issue? Is it the issue of his policies before? As Newsom points out, this thing predated the pandemic. That is a fair observation. It absolutely did.
What did? The recall?
The recall. This current recall that passed, they had filed it before the pandemic, or before we really knew about the pandemic. So if it's really about the pandemic, it's like, well, why was that filed before? And then it picked up during the pandemic. So clearly there's some link to the pandemic, but it's a legitimate question to ask, like, are you just frustrated we had to go through this, which is a normal human emotion? Or are you legitimately saying, hey, Governor, I feel you could have done things differently, and here's my specific reasons for? Or is it just, I'm upset? I'm not taking a stance. I'm just saying that's what I think it's going to come down to. And I just saw my neighborhood hold the biggest block party they have had in a year last night. So,
where do you live?
Fresno.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It allows me to go to LA or the Bay pretty easy, or SAC. So with activism. So a couple of years I moved here because I'm from here, but it's also centrally located. So it's easy to kind of, hey, we need to be in SAC. Okay.
Did that reporter ever cover the debates? The one that was asking questions or asked a question?
Who, what?
That reporter who was asked a question during the debate.
Oh, Diane Herman.
Did she ever write an article about the debates?
Not yet, because I was going to invite her to one of these. And so I was pushing her off to get her to ask a question, because I was going to invite her. But we also got through to Tom Elias. Tom Elias is the reporter that started the 2003 recall.
Oh, okay. And
he did send a question, which I'm going to be asking at 1 p.m. And then we also got a hold of Jonathan Spivak, who's the top expert referred to by the New York Times and Washington Post on all 2021 California recall issues. And he said he would cover the debates, and he has a few questions. So I'm going to try to get Diane and Tom and Joshua's questions on top of maybe the Times of San Diego questions, just because the Times of San Diego was a little bit right-leaning, but with a little bit cleaning up, I can make the questions neutral. And unfortunately, they are one of the few other groups actually trying to do this. Give me 1 second. I'm going to call Marinelli and get him over here real quick. It's time, brother.
All right.
You should, okay. You should have one. Here we go. Okay, he'll be here in a minute. Thank you so much for wearing a tie.
Yeah, man. I really.
Look at you. See?
I wear a tie, every day at work. Well, actually now they've been a little more casual because of COVID, but I just, it's a little constricting. I should have put up.
I know, and I apologize, but I internet stalked all the candidates, and I saw a photo of you, and I go, "Who's that distinguished-looking professor?" That's Dan. Because you had like the glasses on, and you were doing like this, like.
Oh, okay.
Like it was this distinguished photo. Like he's.
I only wear glasses for distance, so I don't really need.
Yeah, dude, you had this whole thing like you were like.
I wonder what picture that was.
It was this great photo, and I'm like, wow, he looks great.
I have no sound.
I can hear you.
Louis, can you hear us?
And I'm going to exit and come back in.
Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you, but
we can hear you. That's why we live stream. We'll start just to work out the tech issues so that we don't lose anybody. He'll be right back. That's why. Anyways, you look nice. Like the tie. Looking good. Like the flags.
Yeah.
Is that the USA flag upside down?
Well, yeah. The reason I have it upside down is I wanted the blue and the star.
Well, I can hear that there is sound, but it's very quiet.
Can you turn up your speaker?
Right now?
How about now? Can you hear us now?
Can you say something?
Yes, I'm saying something right now. Can you hear me right now?
Yeah, I don't. I have the sound as if it's a.
Okay, we'll work this out. We'll get this figured out. That's why we do this. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I don't know how many early morning viewers we are, but for everybody who will watch this, this will be the live debate between two different candidates for the recall election. It is starting at 9. We're working out technical difficulties to make sure that we bring to you a clean and distinguishable audio recording and video. Bear with us over the next few minutes while we organize that. We have a great debate between Dan Kapelovitz and Louis Marinelli. Louis, can you hear us now?
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I hear you.
Dan, can you hear Louis at all?
Yeah, I can hear him.
Louis, can you hear Dan?
Hello.
Okay. All right. I have to ask. So both candidates have indicated they can hear each other. They're all here. It's about 9:02 a.m. Give me 1 minute to do something real quick. Let me just pull this up because I have, sorry. I need 1 minute to just get ready. Okay. Here we go. Okay. So I will do 1 second, because I have a special questions here. Okay. All right, here we go. So I'm going to go to commercial. You're going to both see a commercial stream across the thing. We'll come out of the commercial. I will then explain the format of the debate. Both candidates will have 2 minutes for an opening statement where they can either address the central question on does California seem more like a nation or not, or should it? Or they can talk about their own candidacy or anything that they want, as long as it's not offensive to the general public. We give every candidate the opportunity to define themselves as they want. I'll come out of the commercial. I will run through the format of the debate. We will then do 2-minute introductory statements. I will then go to each question. After each question, each candidate will have 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes to answer. After both candidates answer, I will then ask each candidate to respond to the other candidate's answer. So you're going to give your response, they're going to give their response, and then I'm going to say, what did you think of what they said? And then I will turn to them and say, well, what did you think of what they said? Causing what's called as a debate. So it'll be straightforward, no tricks, no gimmicks. Everybody's going to see what's coming, how it is. That's not what we do here. So let me go to commercial. I will explain everything. If you have any questions, just raise your hand and say, hey, that's not clear to me. I will stop and explain the whole thing, and we will go from there. But I think it'll be relatively easy. So let me go to commercial, and then we'll come right out and start. Okay, thank you both. Welcome. This is the Yes California series of debates amongst declared candidates for the governor's race. Yes California has been hosting a series of debates amongst half of the declared candidates for the recall election, including Green candidates, Democratic Party candidates, social progressives, social conservatives, and Republicans. We were happy to do so. As part of that, we had made the offer to all candidates that they could ask any other candidate to debate on any topic. Following that, we followed through the requests, and now we have a debate from Louis Marinelli versus Professor of Law Dan Kapelovitz. And we will be talking about some legal issues, but mostly on the topic of, is California more like a nation than a state, a topic that candidate Marinelli has been running on. We're going to allow each candidate a 2-minute opening statement where they can introduce themselves as a candidate. They can address the central question of, is California more like a nation or a state, or should it? Or they cannot address that question and continue to talk about whatever they would like as it relates to their campaign. We will go with Professor of Law Dan Kapelovitz first for a 2-minute introductory statement, and then candidate Louis Marinelli, after which we will move to the questions provided by me, the moderator. Professor Kapelovitz.
All right, first of all, I want to kind of clear up. I don't know if I'm technically a professor. I do teach law at the People's College of Law. I teach criminal procedure, evidence, and I run a criminal defense clinic. What I really do is I'm a criminal defense attorney, and also I work for animal rights legal issues. So, but yes, I do teach law at a law school. But I think technically you have to be like a tenured professor to be called professor, maybe, but it doesn't matter. I just don't like people, I don't want anyone accusing me of being a false professor. But anyway,
fair enough.
Yes. And I think I know more than those other two professors that are running, though. So
they're going to see this video, and then they may ask you to a debate, and I will
bring it on. Bring it on, man. But we got to help.
Okay, it's on. You may see more one-on-one debates brought to you live by Yes California.
And Louis did ask me to debate, not vice versa. Just want people to know.
Yes. And I followed the request from Louis.
All right. So as for California, okay, I'm running for the governor of California. I am against the recall in general, but I want to run as a backup in case to prevent, John Cox, a bear exploiter, and others who think they might win. But if you're really against the recall, you might have heard this guy Tor on your debates who is going to resign. So if you're really against the recall, you should maybe vote for Tor, not for me, because if I win, I am going to be governor of California. Now the question is California? I guess we're sort of debating whether California should secede from the rest of the United States, and California is kind of like a nation state. I'll agree. It's a huge state, has a huge population. Bigger than many countries. It's supposedly the 5th or 6th largest economy. It could be a country. There's no doubt about that. I'm not saying it doesn't have the resources or the people or the land or anything to be its own country. I don't think it should leave the Union. I don't think it's realistic that it ever will leave the Union unless maybe, hundreds of years from now, the things, you never know what can happen, but not in the near future. And I was suggesting, if anything, what we should do is partition California into multiple states, maybe 5 states, and that would give us more senators. It would be a little more representative of the population, because you might actually there are conservative areas of California, and they might get 2 or 4 or probably or maybe 6 of the 10 senators if we split into 5 states. And so if anything, we should do that, because that would actually help Californians, I think, more. Now, if we left the Union, then that's just going to make the rest of the United States less progressive, because I think everyone agrees that California is a more progressive state. Especially, I don't think we've elected a Democrat for president since '92, and I think in the '80s we've had a senator who's a Republican. So I think it's been the late '60s since we had 2 Republican senators. So I agree, California is more progressive, but I think we should help the rest of the nation become more progressive, because if it gets more conservative, it's going to affect us. I mean, all these things we care about, like environment. If we have 49 states that aren't as environmental friendly, that's going to come into California. So I am against leaving the union. And if I am elected governor, which I think I will be, read my lips, we will not leave the union. I can promise you that. I can guarantee that. Thank you.
Thank you. 2-minute opening statement, candidate Marinelli.
Well, I got kind of confused during the professor's response if I was debating Professor Kapelovitz or Tim Draper, who was the proponent of the 6 Californias idea, the crazy idea to break California up into 6 states. Maybe you dropped it down to 5 now, but I don't think that we should be breaking California up into different states. Although when California does secede from the Union in our time, I would be in favor of breaking the state up into different states and sort of a federation of sorts, or a union of states within a new country of California that allows for us to maintain the idea of federalism in California, where we would, of course, have a national government based out of Sacramento, but then it would also, evolve and to delegate certain powers and responsibilities to the more regional areas of California so that they can govern themselves more independently. That would be a federalism in California, so we could have several states in California to meet that objective. And I disagree with the idea that we're not going to be able to secede from the union. It's, we can do it if we decide that that's what we want to do. I mean, let's just take, for example, if there was a referendum on the issue, and let's say, just for the sake of the argument, that 70% of Californians voted to secede from the union, and the state legislature affirmed it, and the governor was making a declaration of independence. I mean, at that point in time, the American government has lost the consent of the governed. If the people of California overwhelmingly support independence, then that's what's going to happen. And so our campaign is about educating the people of California on why they should vote yes on independence, because there are several benefits for that. There's no scenario in which anyone could ever say and convince me that given an independence referendum that's overwhelmingly passed by the population of California, with international observers and meeting all international requirements for independence sites, that's affirmed by the state legislature, the elected representatives of the people, and then it's affirmed by the governor, that we're still going to have to just stay in the union just because it's the way it is. That's not going to happen that way. We're going to have a referendum. The people are going to overwhelmingly support it. And then we're going to secede from the union because we have the support of the people, and the American side of the border will lose the consent of the governed.
Thank you.
Are you having sound issues with Louis or me? I'm getting a weird kind of feedback with Louis.
I'll mute one of you guys when the other's speaking.
Oh, okay, Matthew.
So here's what we'll do is Professor Kapelovitz, for every question and every statement will allow
Call me Dan. Just call me Dan.
Dan. I'm sorry, Dan. I'm sorry. I already told you my background history, so I apologize.
Okay.
I already had this debate with another candidate. I was just the way I was raised. So
All right.
Dan, 1-minute rebuttal or response. You can disagree, agree, or pass to the next question. Dan.
Okay, well, as far as the Federalist idea, yes, if California becomes a country, that's fine. Have little mini states of California, and you can, just be the same thing like the states. But as your idea that you can just, if everyone, let's say everyone in California wanted to leave the union, I think that happened where a bunch of states wanted to leave the union, and they all agreed, and it led to the Civil War because they couldn't just leave on their own. And you're always citing Texas v. White, and I actually have Texas v. White here. There you go. And it's you cited. I don't know what you're citing. This case says you can't just leave the union. It specifically says that. So I don't know why you cite that as supporting your position. So even if everyone voted for California to secede and the governor agreed and everything, you still need 2/3 of the House and Senate, and you need 38 states to agree for us to actually leave the union. So, and yeah, you could have a violent revolution and we could fight the rest of the United States, just have another civil war. But you say you don't want to do that. You want to have a peaceful secession if possible. And I just don't see it happening. Plus, I don't know how popular it is. That I don't think that many people want California to leave the union. And I don't know why. I don't know why you're so into California leaving the union. I have to question that. It seems kind of strange. First of all, why California? You don't live in California. Why not? Why not Texas? They want to secede, some people. Or why not any state? Or why not? Why don't you just create your own country on some island, or create a big barge or something, and just why California? Why do you have you don't even live here? Why do you want to mess with us?
Okay, response to candidate Marinelli. Let me unmute you. I apologize. Let me unmute you. I'm sorry.
I'm going to try my best to remember all the points that Dan brought up. If I forget something and he wants an answer to it, then
the main point were, why are you doing this?
But I remember. Okay, so first of all, I would talk about this. Talk about the Civil War, for example. Let's talk about how that unfolded. It didn't happen as a result of the independence referendums that the states held that said they wanted to become independent countries. It happened when the Southern military, the Southern Confederate Army, attacked the Northern Army at Fort Sumter. They attacked the Northern Army. That's what started the Civil War. Months before that, for months, the other states in the South had declared their independence, and there was no reaction. None. No reaction until the Southern Confederate Army attacked the Union Army. Of course, you're going to spark a war when you have a military attack another military. So that's what sparked the Civil War. It wasn't because Mississippi or Tennessee or Arkansas stood up and had a referendum and said we are no longer part of the Union. They did that, and nothing happened as a result of it. Now, they also didn't necessarily leave the Union in some sort because they were technically still part of the Union. But the fact of the matter is we're talking about holding a referendum, and that's not going to spark a Civil War. We're going to vote. And frankly speaking, if it did spark a Civil War in the 21st century, everyone's got TikTok, Twitter, YouTube, cell phones, cameras. I highly doubt that the United States would be sending its tanks in from Arizona and Nevada because people of California simply went to the voting booth to express whether or not they want to separate from the Union in a peaceful gesture and a democratic way to vote for or against independence. That's not going to happen in the 21st century. I mean, how can the United States go around the world and lecture other countries on human rights and democracy, which it loves to do, but then shoot at its own people when it holds a referendum on the issue? So that's just kind of not going to happen, frankly speaking. Why am I interested in making California an independent country? Because I, quote unquote, don't live there. I'm a California resident. Yeah, I don't live there physically at the moment. I'm a California resident. I file my taxes in California, just filed 2020 taxes, 2019 taxes, California, etc. I have residence, a mailing address in California. I'm registered to vote in California. I engage, as you can see, in political activity and political activism in California. What else can I say? I mean, I'm a Californian. I don't have any other ties to any other state in the country. I'm a U.S. citizen. The place where I have the most ties to, the place that I consider home in my mind, that I would return to if I, come back to the United States, would be California. So that makes California my state, my home. And I believe that I don't want to live under the American flag. And as governor, I can make California an independent country. So thereby having the best of both worlds there, where I can live in California, my home, but also not have to live under the American flag, which represents imperialism. It represents war and a bunch of other negative virtues that the Americans support. So yes, I'm the kind of the representative of the independence movement in Russia. We have an embassy here. We have a culture center here. I'm the leader of that culture center and embassy in Moscow. We use just in that capacity, I just wrote a letter to the Russian Foreign Ministry asking for the release of Trevor Reed, who's an American who's been detained in Russia for the last 2 years. So the fact that I just live in Moscow is not that I've given up my American citizenship. It's not that I've given up my California residency. We're doing things here, advocating California values. We have, as I've spoken in the past, we have here an exhibit on California values. There's a great big picture of Harvey Milk on the wall talking about the story of Harvey Milk in Moscow, in a city which bans gay pride parades, in a country which has an anti-gay, anti-homosexual propaganda law. How do you think that happened? Well, it happened because we have a California Culture Center and embassy, and we, in that territory, are allowed to do what we want to do. So I don't, think that it's an accurate statement to say that I'm not a Californian and therefore I shouldn't be advocating for California independence.
Before Dan responds, you were also asked, why do you keep citing Texas versus White as saying you do have permission to secede? That was another question by Dan.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, Texas versus White. So you got it there. I don't know how many pages you printed it on, but at the end of the ruling, it says that the union between Texas and the United States is, what's the word there? Perpetual and blah, blah, blah. But it does say that there's no way for reconsideration except, here's the key word, except through revolution or through consent of the states. So yes, they have pages and pages and pages where it says that the states cannot secede from the union unilaterally. But at the end of the ruling, it says that they can do it with revolution, which of course we're not advocating for because we're a peaceful organization. But also the other secondary option is the consent of the state. So what does that mean? You mentioned there going to Congress and getting 2/3 or 3/4 of the Congress to support some kind of constitutional amendment, going to the 38 states. That's the constitutional amendment process. But the ruling that you have in your own hands, Texas versus White, doesn't say, for example, the states can secede with a constitutional amendment or with the consent of Congress or with the consent of 2/3 or a supermajority of the states. It says the consent of the states. That is the state legislature, the state governments. And so what we're going to do when I'm elected governor is to reach out to these states. We need about half of them. If we get a resolution passed in about half of the state legislatures in this country to say, yes, California can secede from the union if it wants and holds a fair and honest referendum on the issue, and we kind of grant our consent to that, so to speak, then we will have consent of the majority of the states in this union to secede from it. And that's what the plan is, because that's what is the precedent that's set forward in Texas versus White. So I'm glad that you brought that here, because if you read the first several pages of it, yes, of course, you're right. It says it's a bleak document for the issue of secession. But at the end, they do come back and say that a state can secede from the union with the consent of the states. And again, I note that it doesn't say consent of Congress, doesn't say with a presidential signature, doesn't say with a constitutional amendment. It says with the consent of the states. Now, I'll be an honest candidate here and say that nobody has since defined what the consent of the states means. So maybe it is 50%, like I'm advocating for. Maybe it's some other threshold, but that needs to be worked out. That hasn't been set yet, because there is no case law on secession except for Texas versus White. There are no federal laws on secession, and the Constitution is silent on secession. So what that means, if you look at the 10th Amendment, that it's an issue that's to be decided by the states. Again, we have two examples now why secession is a state issue. Texas versus White says you need the consent of the states. The 10th Amendment says that the Constitution does not grant the federal government certain powers or responsibilities, that it is by default the power of the states to resolve it themselves. So it is a state issue, and we will reach out to the states and get their consent and secede from the union.
Dan, your response? You can agree, disagree, or we can go to the next question. Dan.
Disagree. All right. For one thing, Texas v. White, decision from 1868. I don't know if you know what dicta is. It's basically something that's in an opinion that doesn't really need to be ruled on to rule on the issue. So yeah, maybe they have this throwaway line about consent to the states, but that had nothing to do. That decision had nothing to do with the decision in Texas v. White. So whether that's binding or not, but let's say it is. Okay, consent to the states. Let's just assume you're right. It's 20. You need 50%. I guess you need more than 50%. So you need 26.
25 states, because California would be the 26th state.
Right. So you need 25 states in addition to California. Guess what? Not going to happen. And I know you think, well, people who like Trump would love to get rid of California. Republicans would love to get rid of California. I don't think most Americans want to get rid of California. I think they like California. They like Disneyland. And you said, oh, they can come here. It's not going to be a problem. I think in England, the thing's a total mess, Brexit. And I think that's what you're going to hear. You can agree or disagree. But I don't think anyone wants to get rid of California. And we shouldn't get rid of California. I know earlier you debated saying, I think you're trying to make the rest of America more conservative. I think you supported Trump. I believe you're a Republican or a former Republican. And I think this whole thing is you want America to become more right-wing. And you're saying, well, California is never, their electoral votes have never swung the election. Well, maybe in the past. That doesn't mean it won't happen in the future. And also, if it wasn't for California, the Republicans would have control of the Senate. There'd be 2 less senators that are Democratic, the ones from California. So it'd be 50 Republicans to 48 Democrats. So it would definitely swing the country to the right. And I think that is the goal of your movement. I think you can answer it better than I can, but and then that's going to hurt the rest of California. So we don't want that. And if you're, saying you're against imperialism and wars, well, that possibly make the rest of the United States more warlike, more imperialistic. I mean, it would be better to have California values represented in Congress and the Senate. And I mean, you're saying Moscow is like homophobic and all this stuff. So, and you're critiquing America. Why is Moscow so much better? And then I think you said you're not going to even come back to California unless you're governor or it secedes. So, I mean, you obviously don't like California, really. And I think it's not going to, even if we seceded, it's not really going to change that much. I mean, California is going to be California. So I don't know why you don't want to live in California.
Candidate Marinelli, before we do that, today's debate, I wanted to focus on a lot of the law questions. Both of you are very informed, and the parts where we're getting into, does consent mean this? Does it not? How does that work? I find that highly educational for the public because they're not aware, and both of you are at that level. So I'd like to focus the debate on that. However, Candidate Marinelli, a few minutes to respond, and then I'm going to redirect the debate back to legal questions. Candidate Marinelli.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm not saying that I am living permanently in Moscow, or I never said that Moscow, quote unquote, is better than California in some context. I think that you can go to many places in the world and find something that's better than where you're from. But still, California is my home. That's where I have most of my connections to. It's where I'm registered to vote. It's where I have my driver's license. I mean, I've been in Russia for a number of years. I don't have a Russian driver's license. I'm not registered to vote here. I'm not a citizen here. So I think that people can live overseas. We have another candidate who I just spoke with yesterday who's been living in China and Afghanistan and Saudi Arabia and South Africa all his life, and he's Californian. He's running for governor. So, I mean, when it comes to comparison of me and him, for example, I've been living in California all my life compared to him. So, this thing you were talking about before, you were talking about, you brought to this debate a copy of Texas versus what, because you thought that it was going to, support your position, and all of a sudden you find the text in there that says, consent to the states. All of a sudden, well, it's not a binding ruling, and so on and so forth. So it's kind of funny because, it's not so binding anymore because it kind of doesn't work the way you want it to. So anyway, that's my point. I think that I just want to see a little bit of that stuff.
Okay.
I can't remember all of them right now. So,
Dan, do you want to rebut that? I would like to get back
to Texas. I'm not saying that you're correct. I think when they mean consent, I don't think that's even what they're holding is. I'm just saying, assuming that is.
We can read it, and we can. I mean, we know the English language. We can read what it says. It says, "Except through revolution or by consent of the states." It says the states cannot secede from the union unilaterally, and the only way to do that is through. I mean, sure, I agree. We don't have a full legal answer to the question. It hasn't been settled. So let's put a referendum on a ballot. It'll inevitably be challenged, and then the Supreme Court will give us a modern-day 21st century answer on secession. Totally for it. Whatever the ruling is, let's just get it settled, because we don't know. I can't give it a definitive answer, and you can't say it's definitively unconstitutional just as much as I can't say it's definitively constitutional. What we can say is that it can be done peacefully and legally according to what we currently know at the moment.
Okay, I'll just read the passage, the full passage. When Texas became one of the United States, she entered into an indissoluble relation. The union between Texas and the other states was as complete, as perpetual, and as indissoluble as the union between the original states. There was no place for reconsideration or revocation, and here's your line, except through revolution or through consent of the states. So it's pretty clear they're saying it's part of the union. Now you're focusing on this consent.
Well, it's part of the union, except unless you get the consent of the states. You can't just take the first 100 words there and leave out the last.
Because the last words.
They could have put a period. They could have put a period after the part that says there is no room for revocation. Period. Done. But they didn't. They continued and said except, and they gave 2 examples of different scenarios where it's possible for that revocation to occur: revolution or by consent of the
The
state.
consent of the states could mean, and because you need the consent of the states to have a constitutional amendment. They could be meaning that. You don't even know what they mean by consent of the states.
Well, we know that they didn't. Well, certainly we had a constitutional amendment process during the 1869 when they wrote that amendment. So these being the top legal minds of the country, they could have written the words through constitutional amendment. They didn't do that. They wrote through consent of the state. So that's much more ambiguous. Maybe they did mean constitutional amendment, but my opinion is if they meant constitutional amendment, they certainly could have written the words through constitutional amendment words. So they could have written that.
And I agree. If you could get we don't know what percentage. We'll say it's 50%. You probably could get that in Congress and the Senate. If their states are really in favor of it, you're probably gonna have a similar percentage. But it's not gonna happen. I mean, I want to make a wager.
Okay.
Do it.
Okay, we'll move on to the next question. But my last little point would just be that I think in 2015, when Donald Trump announced his candidacy for president, people were saying, it's not going to happen. I'm sure you may be one of them. That never happened. When Earhart said she was going to fly across the Atlantic, that'll never happen. It happened. So when we said we're going to send a man to the moon and return him safely to the earth, people said that's never going to happen, and it happened. So things happen when people say that they can happen. So
that's true. And things don't happen when people say they can't happen.
Okay. I'm going to jump in here. Lively debate. That's exactly what the people want. But I want to zero in on this issue. So it sounds like both of you are saying Texas versus White is a legal decision by the Supreme Court that at least addressed the topic of secession, and it appears to be the only one. It appears both of you are saying that there is at least some sort of phrase that says while secession is generally frowned upon, there's some way through consent to the states. And it sounds like both of you are saying, well, it's up to the interpretation of what consent means. Is that a fair summary?
All right, hold on, sorry.
Yeah, I will agree to that in summary.
Hello, this is a prepaid
hold
call
on.
from.
All right. It's all right. New norm.
Was that a call from the Gavin Newsom campaign asking if you're going to vote for it?
Okay. All right.
Could be.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. I love the liveliness, but
I mean,
it sounds like you're both agreeing on a lot of things. It's just the division is down to, does consent mean amendment for sure or not? Is that a fair summary of the difference?
I guess so, yeah.
Okay.
And whether it's even based on his theory, whether.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Oh,
and yes, everything's possible. All things are possible. I agree.
We can get to that a little bit. It's just I want to focus the debate on an area that both of you are well informed on, and an area that many people aren't. Most people are not familiar with the boutique Supreme Court decision on secession. They don't even know Texas versus White exists, and they don't even know.
Brought it up last time.
Yeah, and it's like it's the only time the Supreme Court mentioned it. It's a boutique thing. Most people don't even know there. I do want to point something out, though. David A. Carrillo is the executive director of the California Constitutional Center at the UC Berkeley Law School. When asked about the Texas versus White decision, he said this, quote, Texas versus White held that states cannot secede, and that decision's offhand comment about the states consenting probably refers to the constitutional amendment procedure. He said probably, but he's a constitutional scholar. Why not say definitely?
You asking me?
Yes.
Because for instance, this is a decision in 1868 or 1869. And you don't know. I mean, I guess it would go to the U.S. Supreme Court to decide how a state can secede. And so, maybe right now with you got 3 Trump appointees, maybe they would allow California. Maybe they make it easy. That's why probably you don't know, because it's just the whims of the Supreme Court, basically.
Probably because he doesn't know and he has his own opinion, but he doesn't want to go out there as a legal expert and say, I definitively know something. So that's kind of just hedging your bet. You're putting out your opinion there and you're leaving some space there for you to be wrong. That's what you're doing. You're not going to go out there and say anything definitely, because then if something else happens, you came out to be wrong. Well, by saying probably, you give yourself some space there in case the opposite happens. And I'd also point out, we're talking here a lot about constitutionality of the secession based on this 1869 ruling. Well, let's not forget that in this country we had prohibition, which was legal. It was legal, so to speak, for the government to make it illegal to manufacture, sell, and transport alcoholic products. That was legal at some point in time, and then it was changed to be the opposite. So things can change. I mean, we had. When did we get women's suffrage in this country? 1919? So for over 100 years, we had no voting rights for women, and then we got it. Things changed. The culture changed. The mindset changes, not only in the culture, but in the Supreme Court. So I think it's just, I mean, sure, we could talk about what did the Supreme Court in 1869 think, and what was, that's a different time period. It's just after the Civil War. They had different mindset. They were in Reconstruction, and there's no way to say what the Supreme Court today would say unless they take up the issue. So we have, talk about school segregation, talk about women's rights, talk about civil rights, and all of the different bunch of issues that we've had over the last 245 years of our country's history. And if you have one Supreme Court versus another Supreme Court in different time periods rule on the same issues, you're going to have different results. So yeah, maybe in 1869, when it was kind of the prevalent thought at the time was we need to keep the Union together. That's what the goal of the Union was at the time of the Civil War. Northern states that would keep the Union together, and all the forces of the federal government were aimed towards keeping the Union together. Of course, they're going to come up with some kind of ruling that says we to secede from the Union. But I don't think that's necessarily the case today. We have different people on the Supreme Court. We have different time period. We have different culture. We have different government policy preferences and needs, and different technologies. The whole situation has changed. And I don't think that necessarily the Supreme Court would come out in 2021 or 2022 and say, the Union is soluble, blah, 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 except for consent to the state. I think that they would rule more definitively on the issue one way or the other.
So it sounds like both of you are saying is we cannot definitively say what consent is, and that it would be up to the Supreme Court of the federal government to definitively say. Is that a fair summary?
Yes.
Well, I'll agree. We can't definitively say it. Yes, prohibition was enacted by constitutional amendment, and then it was taken away by constitutional amendment. And one more thing I'd say, I think it is in the Constitution what's required for a state to be created or partitioned, and that does require the federal government approval. So I think it, by analogy, even though the Constitution doesn't talk about what's required to leave the Union, I would think legally, and you might disagree, I think it would be more akin to what's needed for a partition or creating a new state within the Union. So, but yeah, okay, let's assume you're right. All you need is 25 states plus California, and we can get it easily. I still think it's not a good thing to do, which is really the real issue. Who cares? Okay, we can do it. Let's say it's going to happen. What's so great about it? You're saying, well, we give so much taxes to the federal government and we get less back. And I was saying, yes, maybe we should act more like a nation state. Maybe we should flex our muscle. We have the power of the people and the dollars and lay down the law with the rest of America. And maybe I suggested in one of our debates, maybe we could become a tax protest state, or maybe we could limit, what taxes we pay to the government. But also makes us a lot freer because we're not bound by, a lot of times the federal government tries to threaten states, so we're not going to give you funding if you don't do what we say. So we're actually pretty free. We have the best of both worlds because we do get the benefits of the United States, the power of the United States. And I agree, I'm not imperialist. I don't agree with a lot of the United States policies, or Biden or Trump, and yes, it might be a better country to live in than just California. I like a lot of other people all over the country, all over the world. But I just don't. I like the tax protester idea. If you're really worried that we don't have enough money, then say, hey, man, we're a tax protest sanctuary state. You don't think they're going to come invade us? They might. We don't pay taxes, but they would need a local law enforcement to help enforce tax collection. If we became a tax protester state, And if it's everybody, they're not going to throw the entire population in California in prison for tax evasion.
Hey, well,
Wait, real quick. I'm going to allow Marinelli to respond, and then I have questions from lawyers on this topic that I want to ask both of you. So, Marinelli, please, a short response, and then we're going to get back to the theme of the debate.
well, I'm sure I'm entirely for a tax protest as you're speaking about. I think that we should, as a state, make a protest and say we're going to stop paying our taxes until such conditions are made where California has equal representation in Congress, for example. So I'm with you on that. That's a good idea. I'm supportive of that idea. I don't think it goes far enough because I don't think that it's going to lead to the kind of benefits that independence would. But I think it's a good first step. We could take that to show the people of California that, hey, when we start to defy the federal government, they're not going to come shoot us with their tanks and drop bombs on us. And frankly speaking, if you go back to the Civil War, that's not what happened either, because like I said, the states had passed their resolutions to secede from the Union. Nothing happened. It was peace and nothing happened. And then the South made a stupid move. They attacked the North. Well, California, if we hold a referendum of independence or we do a tax protest, we're not going to then follow that up with some kind of attack against, military base in California somewhere. So that's not going to lead to some kind of attack, and it's not going to lead to a civil war because we're not going to provoke the American side, and they didn't start the Civil War either. The South did, so that was their major flaw. It's always interesting for me. I know that a lot of times people have these kind of what-if conversations about history. It's always interesting for me to think about what would have happened in the 1860s had the South, passed their articles of secession and then never attacked Fort Sumter. Maybe it just would have been some kind of standoff for several years where they said, well, we're not part of the country anymore. And they would have said, yes, you are. And they would have said, no, we're not. And it'd be interesting to see what would have happened if nobody ended up attacking each other. We could have had a completely different history in this country.
Dan, do you want to respond, or can I move to the next question?
You can. I mean, there's nothing to respond to. I think you agreed that they never did actually secede. They did the Articles of Confederation, but yeah, you don't know what would have happened. I guess you're correct. And the Electoral College. I mean, even that's a hard thing to reform. We need to have more representation. I think that'd be easier to reform than getting California to secede. But I agree. We should have more representation. That's why I suggested partitioning California. We would get more representation.
Well, there wouldn't be a we anymore. It would be a group of Californians, not one entity. So
that's true.
Let's move on to the next question.
Okay, thank you both. I appreciate it. It's just both of you are really familiar with this topic. There's not a whole lot of people who are, and it's not fully well understood. So it's nice for the public to be able to get information from two experts on the subject and to hear them competing, because they're more likely to believe that information and feel that they're getting a fair shake.
I'm not really an expert on the subject, just so you know. I just
okay. You have
Googling last night a little bit, and
no. You are a competent law expert, and candidate Marinelli is also familiar with the constitutional laws around this. It is at least a high-profile debate that I'm proud to have set up. So I like it when the public. I mean, we set these recall debates up so that the public was educated and was getting information and can make whatever decision they want. That's why I said I don't support the recall. I'm not against the recall. Do what you want. So here's the question for both of you. Erwin Chemerinsky is the dean of 2 University of California law schools and a constitutional scholar. He said in 2017, in theory, because it was a majority vote of Congress to admit California, I mean 51% vote, in theory, a majority vote of Congress could approve secession. What he was speaking about was that California was brought into the United States not through the normal process that most states are. Most states have what's called the ascension process, meaning people move into a territory, populate the territory, then apply to join the United States government. That never happened with California. California was militarily invaded. It had 5 years of dictators from the United States Army in charge. No, that's not made up. You can check it out. The last one was a general who requested that California just go ahead and be made a state, and Congress rushed the vote through. Historical scholars have pointed out that California did not follow the normal ascension process by 47 states, and Chemerinsky's pointing out Well, if they could just have a majority vote to let California in, kind of not following the normal process, why can't they do it to let California out? Dan, how do you feel about Professor Erwin Chemerinsky's comments?
Well, he is, in fact, a constitutional scholar, probably more respected than I am as a scholar, but and he probably knows more than I do. I'd like to see what context he's talking about. So I guess you're saying he's saying because California entered the union in a different way, it could exit the union in a different way.
In theory, because it was a simple majority vote of Congress to admit California, it could be a simple majority vote. Now, most states have a thing where the settlers move into a territory, they wipe out the indigenous and, take over. But that was the law at the time. So you move into a territory, you would create little townships and governments, then you'd have some ratification thing where you went around Kansas and got enough people to say, we want to be Americans and join a state. Then that document would be sent to Congress and Congress would approve it. Never happened at all with California. The United States Army and Navy invaded California. They set up military generals. The last general ordered California to be a state, and the Congress just basically rubber stamped it. Chemerinsky's pointing to that unorthodox manner and saying, well, if that was cool enough to allow California to be a state, how come it can't be legal for it to leave?
Right. I'm sure Chemerinsky is familiar with Texas v. White, probably more than any of us. And it's weird. So it's interesting that he doesn't talk about the consent of the states. He talks about Congress. And you're saying he still says 50%. So he's still saying the federal government would have to approve it. And I agree. We don't know. You don't know until it gets decided by the Supreme Court, I guess.
So it's possible.
And he's saying it's possible. Yeah, anything. Like I said, anything is possible. Now, let me just something totally different. As governor, I am against borders. So who cares if we're a country? I don't even want a border anyway. Some man-made border between us and Nevada. Who cares? And even if we're not our own country, I would say let's not even have a border there. Let's let people go to and fro. And so it doesn't even really matter if we're our own country, really. It's not, I mean, like I said, I guarantee as governor, it's not going to happen. I guarantee even if Lewis is governor, it's not going to happen. But it could happen, someday down the line. I think it wouldn't be a wise decision.
The question is to candidate Marinelli. Same question. Professor Erwin Chemerinsky, Dean of 2 University of California Law Schools, says a simple majority vote of Congress.
I heard you. Yeah, I heard you. Okay. Sorry, I don't want to hear the whole story again. It's a long story. So, yes, California did have a different entry path to statehood that did not follow the standard path for the other states like Ohio and Iowa, Minnesota, most of the other states, the great majority of them, by the way. It was militarily conquered, taken over by American settlers, and followed by the American military afterwards. It was then run by military leadership for several years, between 1846 to 1850, when it became a state. And it became a state through the Great Compromise of 1850, which basically, if the people of California really want to know what was the cost of California statehood, they'll be, I think, unhappy to learn that the cost of California statehood was extending slavery into places like Utah and New Mexico. That was part of the deal, where they said, okay, the southern states will vote to concede and let California join the union as a free state, but the kind of trade-off of that was the rest of the country had to agree to allow the Utah territories and I believe New Mexico to join as slave states. So as a result of California becoming a state in the Union, we allowed slavery to extend to the American Southwest. So that's one thing as well. I mean, it's important to take that into context because California was added to the Union as part of a law that was passed, and it was a conglomeration of laws. In fact, you can actually open up the Compromise of 1850 and find a particular Senate bill. I forget the number of it, but there is a specific Senate bill and a specific number. I think it's something like Senate Bill 17 or Senate Bill 16 or something to that effect. And it's about 2 paragraphs long, and it says that the state of California and such a borders here and there is going to be entered into the Union and blah, blah, blah. And so, yes, that was passed by a simple majority vote. So I agree with the professor or whoever he was who spoke about this topic, that it's also possible, I mean, because we don't know definitively, that if California was admitted into the state through a package of legislation that was passed by majority vote, that what happens if you simply repealed that legislation? if you simply repealed the bill that made California a state. You can repeal that bill by a majority vote. If you repeal the bill that made California a state,
It'd be a territory.
undo the statehood, and it makes California then a territory, or it makes, what does it do? I mean, it's just another what if, because we don't know. So it's just, that's why I think this professor was trying to get at, that we don't know. So that's maybe why he didn't talk about Texas versus white, because he was talking about another what if. I think it's a very interesting topic. What happens if the Senate of the United States and the Congress, by majority vote, simply repealed the bill that made California a state by majority vote? It would undo the contents of that bill. That bill made California a state. So by logical extension, it undoes that statehood extension. Also another avenue to pursue.
Interesting. Dan, thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it just become a territory then if that really happened, but I don't think it would automatically make it its own country.
It's a good step in the right direction if we became a territory.
It what? Oh, right
I
direction.
think it'd be a good step in the right direction if we became a territory.
But it seems both of you are agreeing that in theory, if you could just undo that, it would somehow remove the legal attachment of statehood. I feel
Well, if
like
you could undo it, you could undo it. I mean, it's just a circular thing. If you could
If you just repeal the bill, then you undo what the bill did.
okay.
So
Here's the next. Well, and I
maybe you can't undo a state as easy it is to enter state. I mean, I don't know if you can just undo it.
well, you can just repeal the bill. I mean, let's just change the topic for a second. Let's say that Senate Bill 16 made made the flag of the United States have the color purple in the middle, a purple circle, and they didn't like it, so they repealed that bill. What would be the result of repealing the bill? It would remove the purple circle. So if we take that same extension and we say, well, here's a bill that made California a state. Well, let's repeal that bill. What does it do as a result? It unmakes California a state.
Yeah, but there's a difference between making and unmaking a state and adding a color to a flag. But okay, let's move on to why is it so great for us to be at a state? I never heard that.
But before we get to that, can I ask one more legal question? I apologize. It's just you're both here. So Danny Savalos is the CNN and MSNBC legal analyst. Danny Savalos is the CNN legal analyst and the MSNBC legal analyst. And on November 11th in 2016, he said, in his opinion, that consent would mean 38 out of 50 state houses would have to approve it to satisfy what the Supreme Court calls consent to the states. That's not the full amendment process. It just says state legislatures, which seems to get at what candidate Marinelli is mentioning. Is Danny Savalos wrong? Is he right? Or is this, we can't tell, in just his opinion? Again, the legal analyst for CNN and MSNBC did not say amendment, but he did say 38 out of 50. We'll go to Dan first and then Marinelli.
Well, I don't know if he's right or wrong. At first, you got to say, is the consent to the states language binding? And let's say it is. Then you'd have to define consent of the states. So some people would say 51%. Some would say 38. So yeah, I mean, I agree. Nobody really knows. It would go to the Supreme Court, definitely. This kind of, if there was ever a real like vote to secede, it would obviously, I think, go to the Supreme Court. And so all you really need is 5 people to agree. You don't need 38 states; you just need 5 people.
The Supreme Court in 2019, with 5 conservative justices, broke a long-standing decision that had been upheld concerning abortion for the last 40 years. The New York Times, MSNBC, and multiple legal analysts have said that the Supreme Court is as radically shifted as it has been since the 1970s. Since we're facing a radical new Supreme Court that seems to be very different over the way laws have been ruled for the last 50 years, do you feel that it's possible that this new, quotes, radically conservative Supreme Court could reinterpret some of these key legal issues? Let's go to Marinelli first and then Dan.
Well, don't I get to answer the first question about the CNN legal analyst?
Yes, sure. Yes, CNN legal analyst, please. Sorry. Let's go to
So
that one first.
I think that this interpretation from the CNN analysis is somewhat closer to what we're advocating because he is taking out the federal government from playing a role, which there is no role for the federal government to play in there, as I've discussed previously with the consent of the states language and also the 10th Amendment. So at least it's in the right direction. I mean, the question is what is, I think, like Dan is saying, what constitutes consent? Is it 51% or is it going to be the 38 number? Now, the reason I think he's taking that 38 states number is because I think he's taking from the position of what is required to call for an Article 5 constitutional convention. And there's a group out there that's going around the country trying to get state houses and state legislatures around the country, 38 of which, to pass a resolution calling for an Article 5 constitution so that there could be a new constitutional convention convened to rewrite the Constitution from the ground up. And once they get 38 states to do that, then there will be a constitutional convention to rewrite the Constitution. I support that idea. I think that currently, right now, if I recall, they're somewhere in the upper 20s in terms of the number of states that have passed resolutions in support of an Article 5 constitutional convention being called. So we're following that same model where we would go around the states and ask for consent through a state house legislation or state house resolution supporting California independence by an act of the state legislature. The question is, do we need 26 or do we need 38? I mean, that's something that I guess we'd have to work out. But until otherwise, I think that we would go with majority rules, because we have in this country this idea of majority rules. We have elections in which the person who gets the most votes wins, first past the post wins. We have in California even the same idea where you have the first one who gets 51% wins the election. So we have a lot of examples in elections and voting where 51% is an important number in America. And so I don't know why all of a sudden for this particular issue we would have to get 66% of the states or something to that effect, or 3/4 of the states or something like that. But who knows? If the Supreme Court says we need 38 states, and I think we'll get 38 states too, because most of the states in the country are red states with low populations and don't appreciate the influence that California has on their daily life.
We're going to go to address the question that Dan is asking, and then we're going to go to some legal questions because you're here. But Dan, thanks for being here. For a few minutes, I believe, Dan, tell me if I'm getting this wrong. Why push the idea of California being independent? Right, Dan? I think that's what you're asking. Like, Marinelli, why is this a good idea? What do we gain as Californians from even doing it? Is that a fair synopsis, sir?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. Candidate Marinelli, that's the question to you. And then we'll allow Dan to respond. And then we're going to get back to one more legal question because I got both of you and I'm super excited about this topic. Candidate Marinelli, please explain to, we're here. You and I are in an elevator. This is my favorite example. We walked into an elevator. You have 2.5 minutes to tell me, and you may never see me again in your life, why should I back this idea? But you have my full and undivided attention. Can you convince me in 2.5 minutes? Candidate Marinelli.
I wonder how tall this tower is that we're going to be in the elevator for 2.5 minutes.
2 minutes. You have 2 minutes then.
It's a very tall tower.
You just made it. You made it worth yourself. Now you have 2 minutes.
Okay. Well, basically, we're going to the top of this tower. Look outside. You see beautiful California, but you can see how bad our infrastructure is. Looking around. It's got a panorama. Look how bad our infrastructure is. Infrastructure falling apart. There's some schools over there. There's some hospitals over there. They're not fully funded. Independence means that we keep California's taxes in California. What does that mean? We're going to rebuild those roads over there. We're going to fully fund that school. We're going to really fully fund that hospital. We're going to provide universal health care for everybody. We're going to provide free tuition for everybody. Well, not free tuition because it's paid for by taxes, but you know what I mean. It's going to be free education for everybody, including higher education, trade schools, and universities. The price tag of which is $5 billion a year, according to the state senate. So by keeping California's taxes in California, we can fully fund education, fully fund healthcare, fully fund the development of infrastructure, build more infrastructure, like the infrastructure we need to bring more water to the Central Valley to our farmers. So there's a whole slew of things that we can do with our taxes, keeping them here in California instead of subsidizing, by the way, some states in the United States that don't even like California. What do they think that the people of Arkansas think of California, the people of Texas, the people of Louisiana, Mississippi, Tennessee? Those states hate California. and our taxes go to those states. We're subsidizing those states because they're not able to take care of themselves. In fact, there was not so long ago, there was a year, I believe it was 2017 was the year, or 2018, when the state of Mississippi received about $1.20 in federal funding for every dollar it paid in federal taxes. That means it was getting that money from California. And that year, that Senate passed a budget that gave them a budget surplus. So they have a budget surplus in Mississippi. They're getting more federal funding than they paid in federal taxes. That's California subsidizing Mississippi so they can have a state budget, more money. So I think that the basic argument is this: let's have California's taxes stay in California, fully fund California. It will do two things: it will reduce the cost of living in California, and it will increase the quality of life in California.
Candidate Kapelovitz, your response, sir.
Okay, well, first of all, I like helping other states. I like helping other people. I think that we have taxes. We tax the rich more than we tax the poor because we believe in helping people that don't have it as well. So that's great that we help Mississippi. I don't have no problem with that. And this goes back to if it's going to happen. If these states hate us so much, why would they vote? And we're giving them all this money. Why would they want us to leave? And then also there might be costs that are added by being a country. When you're a country, you have probably a lot more costs involved. We'd have to build our own military. If you could say we don't need a military, but that's the biggest part of the budget pretty much. And so now we'd have to build our own military. Now, I guess you're saying we give more to the federal military than we get back. So maybe it's a wash or whatever. So, but if that's the only reason, just to keep a little bit of money, I think that doesn't outweigh the benefits of being part of the United States of America.
Well, a little bit of money is a college tuition for your son or daughter. A little bit of money is universal health care for your grandfathers, your mothers, your fathers, your brothers and sisters. A little bit of money is a more smoother road so you don't spend as much money every year on car maintenance. A little bit of money is going to do a lot of good in California if we just keep our money. We're not asking for money from the other states as some kind of a gift. All we're saying is let's keep our money, our taxes in California and invest in California. That's, I think, a very fair argument to make. Instead of giving it to places like Mississippi, frankly, I don't want to give it to Mississippi. Those states over there, they don't share our values. They don't like California. And they don't like California because they're misinformed. They are misinformed. They think that California is some drag on the budget. So on one hand, they don't like California because of reasons that are inaccurate. So why they're biting the hand that feeds them, to be honest with you, because California feeds this country with our agriculture industry. We send our fruits and vegetables, our milk products around the country. We're feeding the country, and many of those states are biting the hand that feeds them. And I think that eventually, what do you do when a dog bites your hand? You eventually got to put that dog down to sleep. I think it's time for us to separate from the union. That same analogy that eventually we've had enough of not being appreciated for who we are in this country, that we support this country financially. We feed this country with our agriculture. And then many places in the country hate California, hate Californians. What happens when Californians move to places like Washington or Idaho? They get their car spray painted on saying, go back to California. I can show you the pictures. So you got legislatures in Ohio or Indiana, I forget which one, saying that California is the land of fruits and nuts. I mean, this is the kind of mentality that the other states have about California. They don't like what we do here. They certainly don't like what we do here in California, leaving and coming to their states. They got shirts in Texas saying, don't California my Texas. What is that about? That's about don't make Texas into California. Well, if they loved California so much, why wouldn't they want Texas to become like California? Obviously, they don't like California. They don't want Texas to become California. So therefore, they don't want Californians to come there and bring their culture with them, bring their mentality with them. And that's what we're dealing with in state after state. I'm sure you can find a shirt like that in every state. So the bottom line is the other states in this country don't appreciate California, although they should. We're subsidizing them. We're feeding them. They don't appreciate it. It's time for us to have a national divorce. I mean, anybody would seek a divorce from a spouse that didn't appreciate them for years and years and years and took advantage of them for years and years and years. And based all of that on inaccurate information.
Okay. I really want to get to another question, but Dan, if you'd like to respond, I'll keep it to 1 minute, and then we're going to move to another legal question. Dan, response.
Well, I think you overgeneralize. I think just because there's a T-shirt that might exist in every state, that doesn't mean that's what everybody thinks. I mean, there are people of all walks of life in every single state. You know, maybe some states lean more one way or the other, but you're going to find progressive people in every state. You're going to find conservative people in every state. So, and then I just had a question so I assume anyone from the United States could live in California, or would you set a time period where you had to either come here or you're out of luck? So let's say they could.
I would just answer your question real quickly. I would say that anybody that's alive and an American citizen today would be an American citizen the day after California becomes an independent country, and every American citizen would have the right to California citizenship.
Okay, so then they could move to California, and then their children would be Californians.
Well, I'm saying, like, for example, let's say that, my father, for example, lives in Florida. Well, he's been an American citizen his whole life. Let's say that tomorrow California becomes an independent country. Because California was part of the country that he's a citizen of his whole life, and he never really planned on losing that, I would extend California citizenship to those types of people who are American citizens who lived in America their whole life with California part of it, and never really depended or thought that California would someday leave. So therefore, they never really planned to move there, but they should still have the right to go to California because they were alive during the time when California was part of the country. So I would say any U.S. citizen, no matter what state you're living in, would have a right to California citizenship. And then I would, say that, of course, people in California are automatically California citizens.
Right. So if someone, let's say your dad, California becomes a country, then your dad in Florida has another kid, he wouldn't be a California citizen.
That's right.
Okay. But your dad, before he has that kid, he can move to California, and then his kid would be a California citizen.
Well, he wouldn't even have to move to California. I think he could just have California citizenship living in a foreign country, kind of like me. I'm a citizen of California.
His kid could be a Californian.
I think that he would have, there'd be a process as there is, like I just used this process in Moscow, for example. I had a daughter who was born 4 months ago. She was born in Russia, so obviously she's a Russian citizen. We went to the embassy. I demonstrated that I'm a U.S. citizen, that I lived in the United States for most of my life, paid taxes in the United States, et cetera, and they conferred upon her U.S. citizenship. That happened on Wednesday.
Okay,
So
what I'm sort of getting at is, if we make California so awesome by being its country, we have free education, free health care, the best roads ever, then everyone will just, it's so great, everyone just move here, and then it's going to cost even more to do all this stuff. So I don't know.
I don't think that's the case, because you know why? Because there's a lot of countries around the world who have those types of services. I mean, we're not trying to create some magic show here, do something new. There are countries around the world that offer free education, free healthcare. The question is, why doesn't the United States?
Thank you. Thank you both. We are running out of time. I have to go in a few minutes. There's one question I must ask both of you before we do. What if California were to say, we're tired of being run by a minoritarian Republican Party? Nate Silver of 538 is one of the most respected political analysts in all of America. After the election of Joe Biden, he said, perhaps we need to talk about the possibility that California will still secede, even though Biden was elected. Was his quote. What it was pointing to was this scenario brought up by urban demographer Norman Orstein. This quote comes from Professor Jonathan Taplin. Jonathan Taplin wrote an article in the LA Times. He is the professor of the dean of the communication school at the Annenberg School at USC. What he's doing is backing up what Nate Silver said. So we have one of the top political experts in America and one of the professors of communication school in California, and they're saying the same thing. By 2040 or so, 70% of Americans will live in 15 states, meaning 30% will choose 70 senators, and that 30% will be older, whiter, more rural, and more male than the other 70%. That comes from the United States Census Department, which says that basically the interior of America is being hollowed out. Young people are not staying in the rural Midwest. Minorities are not moving there, and neither are immigrants. So what we're having is 15 states along the coast where most of the population is, while 35 states are hollowed out with very few people who are almost all white, rural, white, older, watch Fox News, and have zero interactions with minorities or immigrants or young people at all. That's according to the census and demographers, and they're saying the situation is that way till the year 2045, or the year after NASA has planned to have a colony on Mars. No, I'm not making this up. So when we look at the fact that a president lost the popular election and got to be president, George W. Bush, and then another president lost the popular election and got to be president, Donald Trump, and then the Senate allowed, drawing a blank, but the Supreme Court Justice Kavanaugh to get confirmed without even looking at the evidence against them for the accusations, I believe, on abuse. I got to tell you, there were many Californians who wrote articles going, what faith can we have in the federal government if the Senate won't even look at the evidence against Kavanaugh? What kind of country is this that this happens in? That's what Professor Jonathan Taplin was pointing to. Additionally, we have the Senate can't even convict or hold someone for trial on treason when we all watched it happen on January 6th live on television. So Californians are pointing to the fact that the Senate allows someone like Kavanaugh in without even looking at the evidence, can't even prosecute a treason trial when we all believe it happened, and two presidents. Yes, so Californians feel that the January 6th storming of the Capitol was a coup. They feel Donald Trump did encourage that, and they were disappointed when the Senate was not able to do anything about that moving forward. These Californians are also pointing to the fact that they lost 2 presidential elections due to a loss, even though they had the popular vote. And the Senate.
I think you're saying, I just disagree that the events of January 6th were treason. So,
Okay.
I wasn't sure what you're referring to by that.
Thank you. May I please finish the question?
Well, I get the question. So you're saying this is an electoral college issue, which maybe we'll never be able. I know a lot of people want to. It might never change because you're not going to get the smaller states to agree to change the electoral college system or the way that everyone gets 2 senators, no matter how the size of your state. That's an argument to split California up, partition California, have it be a bunch of smaller states, and then we'll get more senators. It's not an argument to leave. That's going to make America even worse. And I think I probably have more likelihood that we could change the electoral college system then. And there are these things where some states they're agreeing to do, base it on I forgot how they're doing it, but it's so,
win the popular vote.
Yeah, right. So that will probably happen sooner than secession. So there's ways to address that issue. I agree it's a problem, but I don't think secession's the answer. But I do have to go soon, but obviously you can respond.
Louis, candidate Marinelli.
Well, yeah, I mean, Marcus here was talking about a slew of problems. It's a nightmare. I mean, look at what's going to happen when the population shift continues to go towards the coast. Like you said, you're going to have, 30% of the population choosing the majority of the Senate in some contexts. And that Senate is going to be chosen by people of a particular background, ethnicity, and financial status, etc. So that's going to spell more problems. I mean, we think we have problems now. What do you think we're going to have in the future when, California and New York and Massachusetts can elect, this minority of the Senate, although they represent the majority of the population, and then those interior conservative red states are going to decide the future. That's not only going to decide the future of legislation passed by the Senate, but because the Senate has the authority to pass treaties and ratify treaties, that's going to affect the treaties that we pass. It's going to affect which people are appointed to the Supreme Court. It's going to affect which people are appointed to other federal agencies that are, confirmed by the Senate. So it's going to have a massive impact on the future of the country. And the country is going to shift to be a more conservative country. The question is, does California want to be a part of a more conservative country, a country that's more conservative than it already is? I don't think it does. And so I think that we need to start planning our exit strategy so that we are not in the country when that comes to pass, because it's going to make things even worse for California.
Dan, your response, sir?
I just think there's other ways to deal with it than leaving the state, like I said. But like I said, I do have to get going.
Okay, we'll go to closing statements. I'll just point out that right at this moment, a majority of the state legislatures are controlled by Republicans. A key question would be, if you know that you have power, and this is what Professor Taplin and Nate Silver were getting at, the Constitution gives smaller states power. If 35 states or 40 of them are conservative and they know have power, why would they ever allow liberal states in, meaning it would take away their power and balance given the polarization of the country? You'd have to convince 35 states to do something not in their political interest. But we'll leave that question and go to final statements. Dan, I'm going to let you go first. A 2-minute closing statement. You can say whatever you would like. You can agree with things Louis said. You can disagree. You can make comments about your candidacy. It's whatever you would like. 2 minutes. And thank you for being here, Professor. Dan.
All right, thank you. Now, I just wanted to, Louis mentioned that it sounds like he was all in favor of the January 6th events. So that kind of makes me question this whole secession thing too. I mean, I think he's just trying to sow discord in America. I think California should be part of America. I love America. I love California. And when I'm governor, we're going to stay in the union. I can guarantee it. That's all I have to say.
Question to Marinelli, perhaps you could explain a little bit about that. Most Californians view January 6th as a coup.
What's wrong with that? I mean, we're trying to leave the country. There's nothing wrong with, I think, that happening. If you think that the government is taking away your rights, I mean, I'm not talking about if it's pro-Trump or pro-Biden. Doesn't matter who's in office. Doesn't matter. You know, I think that the federal government of the United States is a problem. And it's restricting people's rights. It's taking away people's rights. And it's killing people around the world. I have no problem with the fact that the people want to use their right to change the government. That's in the founding documents of this country that says if the government is taking away your rights and it fails to abide by its social contract with the people to protect your rights, that's the social contract that we have with the federal government to, you know, we give them power to protect us. When they abuse that power, it's the right of the people to bring about a revolution or a change. So if the people want to do that, that's what they want to do. Those are the Americans. Those are the Americans. That's what the Americans did. And I see that as a separate country. And so when Americans go to their capital in Washington, D.C. and want to institute, as you call it, a coup, that's not my business. That's a different country. Let them do what they feel that they need to do to secure their rights in their country. Californians didn't participate in that. We didn't go to Sacramento and try to institute a coup in Sacramento, and I wouldn't have supported that.
Okay.
But that's a separate country. Just like if, you know, we had the spring, the Arab Spring in the Middle East, right? They had these uprisings in the Middle East. Foreign country, not our business, but
So
we should support their right to have a revolution in their countries.
Right. Thank you. I need to clarify because this is going to be controversial. So you're not saying that you support a violent coup to take over the government in Sacramento. You're saying Americans did that in America. That's their business. Is that a fair summary, or am I getting this wrong?
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Well, are we still in America?
I'm the leader. Don't forget, I'm the context in which I always speak is I'm the leader of the Calexit movement, which means that I live in a mindset that California is a separate nation. We have a separate nation. We have a separate.
Right.
And so therefore, if the American people, because most people that went to Washington, they weren't Californians. I mean, it's too far away for Californians to go there anyway for a rally or whatever you want to call it. Most of the people that attended that event in January this year in D.C. were Americans from Kentucky, Tennessee, Arkansas, Virginia, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, and so on and so forth. So that's their business. If they want to take down their government because they feel their government has broken their social contract, because that's what they say. I mean, that's their argument for it, is that they feel that they need to have a revolution because the government's become tyrannical. That's their business. Let them do that. And I think there would be some good benefits to that, because America's a big problem around the world, killing people all the time. But that's not what I'm doing. That's not what this campaign supports.
You are not
Californian support.
Okay. You are not advocating for violent movements and coups.
No.
Because people are going to ask. Okay. Sorry. You need to get that.
Who cares if they happen somewhere else?
Hey, if it happens somewhere else, it's their business. I'm not going to interfere. That's the whole point here, is that America interferes with other countries all over the world and instigates revolutions and coups d'etats and so on and so forth.
So California would be an isolationist state too.
As a Californian who wants California to be an independent country specifically so that we don't engage in that type of activity, go in there and say that we're going to interfere with the American system. Let them do what they're going to do.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. Louis, a closing statement to you, and then we will end the show. Thank you, Dan.
Closing. All right, I'm going to take off. I'll take
Okay.
something to air.
I appreciate it.
All right, how do I get out of here?
Yes,
Closing
so my name is Louis Marinelli. I am the Calexit candidate for governor. If I am elected, well, I'm going to make California an independent country. That's why I'm running. I'm going to declare California an independent country. I'm going to have my Declaration of Independence affirmed by the state legislature. If they refuse to affirm this Declaration of Independence, I'm going to send them back to their towns and districts as they do every year of vacation. And they're going to have to explain to their constituents why they don't deserve independence. I think it's going to be a difficult conversation for them to have. I think they're going to support the Declaration. Once we support the Declaration of Independence at the state legislature level, we're going to put a referendum on the ballot so that the people of California themselves can weigh in and vote yes or no on independence. And once we have a Declaration of Independence that's been declared by the governor, supported by the state legislature and the people's elected representatives, and then supported directly by the people themselves, we're going to be in a very strong position to declare California an independent country following the Norwegian model. What we're going to do then is go to the other states in this union, and we're going to reach out to them and convince them and negotiate with them so that they pass resolutions at the state level that says, yes, we give California consent to secede from the union. I think we can do that. We only need to have 26 of them. That's the general plan moving forward. As I'm elected governor, that's what I'm going to do to move forward so that we can make California an independent country. Why do we want to do that? We want to do that because we want to achieve two basic goals. One, reduce the cost of living in California. Two, improve and increase the quality of life in California. How do we do that? We do that by doing one thing. We keep California's taxes in California. We're losing money every year subsidizing the other states in this country. Tens of billions of dollars, sometimes hundreds of billions of dollars. 2019 is the last year for which information is available. In that year, California lost $160 billion in this deficit to the IRS, whereas we paid $160 billion more that year alone than we received in some form of federal funding. As a result, California now has not enough money to pay for its public services, not enough money to fully fund education, not enough money to fully fund our hospitals and our healthcare programs. If we keep California's taxes in California, we can fully fund education. That means free college education for everybody, the price tag of which is $5 billion a year. We can have full healthcare coverage for everybody in California, Medicare for all, whatever you want to call it. I believe everybody should have access to basic healthcare as a right as a citizen of California. We can do that if we keep California's taxes in California. And we can do other things as well, such as reducing our deficit, reducing our tax burden, and also rebuilding our infrastructure. All of these things combined are going to do those two things I talked about at the beginning of this statement, reducing the cost of living in California and increasing the quality of life in California. That's what the goal is. That's what this campaign is about. Let's make California an independent country. Visit my campaign website at calexitgovernor.com.
Thank you very much for being here. We have the debates for all candidates open at 1 o'clock. We hope candidate Marinelli will choose to participate in those debates. Thank you, candidate. We will see you later if you choose to participate.
Thank you.
Well, I appreciate it. I want to invite all candidates that if you would like to debate any other candidate that's participated in the Yes California debates, contact me, Marcus Ruiz Evans at gmail.com, and I will set up the debate on any issue you want with anyone you would like. Thank you very much for participating in this.